Senator Surville, the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate Bill 1166 basically has to do with a revitalization of our Commission on Utility Regulation. The Commission's having its 20th birthday this year. It's about maybe a 10th of SAS law, something like that. It hasn't met, though, in about the last 6 years. And this bill would change that. You all know that we deal with some pretty heavy-duty utility policy issues in this body. And just to give you all a sense of that, I want you to think for a second about the size of the amounts of money that move around when we take these votes. Dominion's annual revenues right now are around $16 billion. APCO's around $3 billion. There's some independent power producers that sell electricity in Virginia. It's probably billions more there. The amount of money Virginians spend on electricity is probably equal to about 60 to 70% of our general fund. Yet we cast votes in this body that move around billions of dollars, and we probably spend about 20 minutes in committee on it a year, maybe an hour. Most of it happens in our offices trying to figure this stuff out. What this bill does is it gives us a place to discuss these issues where they can be discussed in public, where people can have their input, where we can get actual real policy input from staff, from independent staff, and we can have real debate and dialogue about the sort of policy underpinnings of our utility policy. So the public, I think, will have a greater understanding of what we do. So what the bill does is it adds 3 civilians to this board, one selected by the governor, one by us, one by the House. It requires there to be a minimum of 2 meetings per year. Right now, again, it hasn't met in 6 years. This requires 2 meetings a year. It requires the State Corporation Commission to come and provide reports to us every year about how the different bills we passed over the last, 3, 5, 10 years are being implemented, so we can have a sense of how the policy we're trying to implement is working. It requires the governor to present his energy plan to this commission. It requires regular updates from the Department of Energy. It also requires this board to monitor our applications for grants for federal funds. I remember the senator from Fauquier had a bill yesterday we just debated that was designed to try to leverage federal grant dollars. There are billions and billions and billions of federal grant dollars out there right now available for energy infrastructure upgrades. This allows us to oversee and monitor that. Most importantly, it authorizes the employment of staff. The Senate finance budget that just came out, we're going to vote on in a couple of days, has enough money in it for about 6 staffers to provide independent policy advice on these issues, so we don't have to take our advice from interest groups or retain lobbyists. And finally, it requires the presentation. It requires some changes to how our integrated resource plan is done. That's a policy document the SEC has to approve every year, and it requires a workholder group to work on that, so there's less debate and conflict about that in court. From my perspective, this would really transform how we do energy policy in this body on a long-term basis. It would provide the public more transparency, more input. I think it would give them more faith in the decisions we make, and it's really, I think, given the amount of money that Virginians spend on this and how they're going to be spending as we transform our grid going forward, it's a critical piece of policy legislation. I hope we can pass it, and I hope we can come out of here with a strong vote. As it is a bipartisan bill, there's a cognate you're going to see shortly next week, and I hope we can get this done.
Chair recognizes Senator Suderline, the gentleman from Roanoke County.
Madam President, speaking briefly to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, I do not think that we should go further down the path that this envisions. I think that Virginians have not been well served as we've gotten away from the State Corporation Commission looking at these things. This sets us up so that we have this committee of a handful of senior members of both chambers who historically have a certain disposition, just generally, so people that are less likely to be refreshed by the voters, as some say, ever so often. And we will continue to go down the path of continuing trying to dictate electric policy from the General Assembly, which I do not think is a good place for the captive ratepayer. So I hope that there will be a few more folks joining me in opposition.
Chair recognizes Senator Peterson, the gentleman from Fairfax City.
Thank you, Madam President. Speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
And Madam President, I want to thank my colleague for bringing this issue to the fore. I do think we need more perspectives. We need more time. But let me present something. I think it correlates to what my colleague from Roanoke County said. You know, I look around this body, there's 40 senators. There's only one senator in here that's actually tried a case to the Federal Regulatory Commission. There's only one senator here that's actually represented a power company. There's only one senator here that was in a jury trial that hit an 8-figure verdict dealing with a power company. What do you think the odds are that that senator will be sitting on this panel? How about 0? Okay? Because this panel will be stacked by the institutionals, players that, let's face it, move the money around and move the bodies around in this body. So if I thought that this might be an impartial commission, then I might have more faith in it, but I don't. Now, that's not to say there's no value, because I think there's really 2 directions we can go as a Commonwealth. One is what I'm going to call the Souter line direction, which is let's take all of these issues, or the gentleman from Roanoke, I see you. The gentleman from Roanoke direction, which is to have an impartial body called the State Corporation Commission, which is averse to politics, and have them arbitrate all of these issues in the cool, impassioned, non-political venue with a bunch of nerds with, calculators and running the numbers. That's one method. That's the gentleman from Roanoke method. The other method is let's change the Constitution and make the State Corporation Commission elected statewide, which is what a lot of public service commissions have in other states. And then we'll just let people run for office and be open about where they are. And we'd have a totally political system, and we could, cut through all this, well, I'm impartial, okay? People can say, I'm for Dominion, or I'm for the consumer, or I'm, for business, or what have you. But what I'm afraid of is this kind of gives this patina of neutrality where it doesn't really exist, because it's not the State Corporation Commission. We are politicians. We're supposed to take positions. Now, again, I have no doubt, much like a voice in the wilderness, there might be 6 no votes, there might be 3 no votes, there may be 8 no votes on this measure. But I will tell you, if we form this commission, 5 years from now, people are going to be like, that commission is not impartial. That commission is a vehicle or a mechanism for one point of view, and it won't have the credibility that you think it will. So, again, I applaud my colleague from Eastern Fairfax, who is going to always have more input than I will on these type of issues, because, frankly, I have too much knowledge. I'm sorry. But I do hope some people will join me in voting against this bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes again Senator Saravel, the gentleman with knowledge.
Yeah, and I'm over here basking in the glow of knowledge, so I just need to hold on. So, Madam President, speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Sorry, if nobody else desires to speak. Whether you know it or not, we're going through a big transition right now. We are completely redoing how we make electricity, not just in Virginia, but in the entire United States of America. A lot of these plants are going to get shut down prematurely. People got to pay for that. We're going to be in a situation where we're generating electricity, a quarter of our electricity, I believe, in this state from a wind field off the shores of Virginia Beach. A good chunk of it from solar panels scattered all over the state. The energy is going to pulse through our grid in different ways as the sun goes across the horizon. We don't have a grid that is set up to do that. And to create a grid that's capable of accepting and moving that energy around, it's going to cost money and rebuilding. It's going to cost planning. We're going to have big battery storage facilities that need to be placed. They're going to cost money. The technology hasn't even been developed yet. I read in the paper this morning, that with the coming of electric vehicles, people are going to have batteries connected to their house. They're going to provide backup power on a regular basis to people's homes. We need to figure out how that integrates into all of our planning so we don't overspend or overbuild as we try and decide what kind of policies to develop to properly allocate capital to minimize costs to our ratepayers, right? These are not decisions that the SEC is going to make by themselves. We're the ones that set the rules. The SEC implements the rules that we make. Who here has ever gone to the SEC and asked them, what we should do. You know what they say? We don't make the rules. Every time you go and ask them, what should we do? They go, we don't make the rules. That's what they say every time. They don't want to make the rules. They're judges. They implement the rules. Just like if you go to a judge and say, what should the law be on this? You know, you're not going to get the Supreme Court to tell you what our criminal justice policy should be or what our civil justice policy is going to be, because it's not their job. It's not the part of a branch like that. This is a place for us to make policy in sunshine, in daylight, with better staff input, over billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. So we can give it the same kind of scrutiny we give, or at least close to the scrutiny we give the budget every year. I think this could be really transformative, and it restore a lot of faith in how utility policy is made in this state. I would hope we could put up a strong green vote on it. I renew my motion. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator Marsden, the gentleman from Western Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax rise for
Will
question?
the senator rise?
I'll yield.
Senator rises. Senator Marsden has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, would this bill allow for greater amounts of time and more precision in terms of those who are advocates for and care about electricity rates and pollution and all the things that go with energy policy, give them more time to have input to this panel as opposed to the rushed process we have here in the General Assembly?
Senator Sorovell has the floor.
Absolutely, Madam President. Right now, we all know that in committee, we have these dockets that are very compressed, and we can only give advocates, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes to make their case. This could be a place where people can come and we can talk for hours.
Senator.
Hours. We can have lengthy, extended discussions in public in front of the TV cameras and take input from people so they can have their say, and it can be properly considered in public, and where people can actually hear us have debate and dialogue about the differences between a regulated monopoly system and a more free market system like they have in other states where there's more choice. I think that will restore faith in how we make policy on these issues over the long term. Thank the gentleman for his question.
Chair recognizes Senator Vogel, the gentlelady from Fauquier.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the patron yield for a question?
The patron rise for a question.
I'll yield.
Senator yields. Senator Vogel may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask the patron how he would see us navigating this separate commission that in a lot of ways would be very duplicative of a process and a regulatory commission that we already have established. And I'm just curious to hear the patron speak to that point.
Senator Sorovell has the floor.
Madam President, I'm a little confused. I'm not sure which parallel commission she's talking about, unless she's talking about the State Corporation Commission.
Right.
State Corporation Commission?
Yes, Madam President.
Well, Madam President, as I said before, the State Corporation Commission is not an independent legislative commission like this is. The SEC is a judicial body. It's quasi-judicial, but it's judicial, and that body is empowered under a Constitution to implement the laws that we pass and pass on, how much these utility companies ought to be able to build, construct, recover, cost recover, et cetera. This commission, again, my vision was it would operate the same as the Crime Commission or the Joint Commission on Health Care, where we would bring policy issues to it on a regular basis. They do studies, they look at bills, they look at implementation, they vet things so that we don't have to spend as much time on things here. I mean, recommendations come out of the Crime Commission, Joint Health Care Commission typically get expedited through the process because they've been heavily vetted by the time they get here. And so that, in terms of bills, that would be my response. That's the best I can answer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
I would associate my remarks with the senator from Fairfax who spoke earlier on this legislation, and I would just caution the body that we are already navigating a rather complicated process, and I would hope that we would move forward as the process is now before we create this additional body that I think will potentially convolute what is already complicated, and I would hope that we would just move forward as we are. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The bill passes.